Okay, it's Jackie and I'm here with what I'm now going to call part 2B. At this point I have actually recorded up to 7 days. I'm going to try and release these every day till we're done, at least up till day 7. It may stretch out a bit then depending on how long it takes me. But once I'd done part 7 and I'd had a few comments on 1, it occurred to me that I hadn't really talked much about how I got into this, and I'm not going to go into a great long detail about that. I've done it before, further down my timeline, back down my video timeline, but a little bit more about tools. I'm not a beginner, so I think sometimes it's easy for me to take for granted that people know stuff, or not be sure what they need to be able to do this type of paper crafting. So just very briefly and very quickly, I've been paper crafting properly for 20 years probably, but all my life I've made things. I've sewn, crocheted, knitted, macrame, painted a bit, drawn a bit, all this sort of thing. I was a child that made things as well. I started paper crafting just over 20 years ago in a more positive or a more complicated way, other than just sticking things in a scrapbook, which I've always done. And I made mini albums, and I learned a lot of techniques from people like Laura Dennison, who's Follow the Paper Trail, and Catherine, I can't remember her name, but she's under Catherine Scraps. And I made a lot of paper covered mini albums. So this type of thing. So I learned how to put a book together, basically. And if if that's what you like, I would absolutely recommend those people. Go back to some of their early videos and have a look at their techniques. This is Laura Dennison's Stack the Deck binding for mini albums, and it's fantastic. And I think there is a free version of this on YouTube. If you just look up Stack the Deck or Laura Dennison, you'll find it. And it, honestly, you just learn so much from them. And then I found junk journals. And this is one of my, or two of my early junk journals. These are about 10 years old. These are soft covers. I think this one is fabric over pelmet Vilene, sort of thick Vilene, and this one is, oh, I can't even open it now. This one is a remainder of the days journal, and this is fabric over cardstock. And these are made, you can see I was already stitching. These are made using junk. They are literally made using junk. Stuff that came through the door, cards, and you can see that I've used these. I think I love, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. I think I love junk journals because they combine everything. They combine paper, stitching, sewing, fabric, and I end up with something that I can stick stuff in, because that's what I like to do. I like to stick my bits and bobs, my photographs, postcard, things that I like. I like to record memories, places we've been, and it gives me somewhere to stick what I've collected, basically. I don't actually go in order. I've got everything. So I've got my dad in, I think that's 1997, my son 1980. There's my dad again when he was a little boy, so that's 1924-ish. I just plonk everywhere. These are just for me. They're not for any sort of memories. So that's where I came from. And when I was making those sorts of things, I didn't have any special tools. I did it all with very basic tools, and that's all you need. And what I would recommend definitely is a cutting mat, a decent craft knife, and a steel ruler. So with those, you can square everything up using this mat. So everything you can square, so you get decent edges. You need a sharp blade in this, sharp blade, so change it regularly, and your steel ruler. So from a point of view of cutting, that's all I had for a really long time. Now I have a tonic guillotine. I really like the speed it offers me, and it is, I would say, a little bit more accurate, but it's definitely not necessary. You need some decent fabric scissors if you're going to cover your journals in fabric, and don't use them for cutting paper because it will blunt them. So if you haven't got a rotary cutter, I showed you my rotary cutter probably in part 2. I hope I've shown you the rotary cutter in the part 2A. I can't really remember. But if you haven't got a rotary cutter, you can cut decent overlaps in your fabric with a decent pair of scissors. You also obviously need paper scissors, and I like a large pair and I like a small pair, and these are non-stick. I quite like a non-stick pair as well, although they do... Oh, I nearly cut myself then. You need decent glue. We talked about that already. So I like a decent PVA and a decent fabric glue. So I would choose, probably my first choice would be Aleene's Tacky Glue and or Mod Podge matte version, and a Fabri-Tac or acetone based glue, which doesn't warp the paper so much, and obviously speaks for itself, it cuts fabric. And then, oh, and a glue stick. I also like a glue stick because that tacks everything down. If you like to ink the edges, which I do, you need a distress ink or an oxide ink and an applicator. I've got the Tim Holtz applicator. A makeup sponge will work just as well, and that's, I would consider distress ink a necessity. I use vintage photo and walnut stain the most, but I did a lot of stamping back in the day, so I do have a lot of inks of different colours, and they're nice to collect. So a sewing machine, I wouldn't be without a sewing machine. I've got several, including good one, a really good one, but I use this small John Lewis electric machine. Janome do a version of this, and I believe this one is built by Janome, and for me this does a straight stitch, a zigzag, it does one fancy stitch, and it's fine. Just 2 lengths of straight stitch, and I often use the longer length for paper because it's less liable to tear. So a sewing machine, not completely necessary, but a really nice addition. And that would be the same with a die cutting machine. I have the Big Shot, but when I started out, my first die cutting machine was a Cuttlebug, and I used that quite happily for many years. I would recommend, if you can afford it, getting a crocodile to make your holes and to set your eyelets. I use 3/8 of an inch eyelets mainly. I didn't have this for a long time. I used a hand setting tool set, which you just hammer, just use a hammer. I'm sorry, I haven't got that to show you, but there are cheaper versions of this. But that I would think you would want to get fairly soon. And a corner rounder is really nice as well. This one is a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch one, and this is by We Are Memory Keepers, which is, the crocodile is by We Are Memory Keepers as well. But there are lots and lots of corner rounders. A few punches are nice. A tab punch is nice to make your, if you're putting tabs on things, it's nice to have a tab punch. I'm very fortunate. I was gifted this by Kathleen Sunby, so I have this one, but I also use this tab punch, which is this shape. I think this is We Are Memory Keepers. Yes, We Are Memory Keepers. So either of those or both of those, if you're lucky, are a nice addition. But you can hand cut tabs as well. I didn't have those for many years. The other tool that I consider essential is a colour wheel. I have quite an eye for colour, I'm told, and I do enjoy toning, matching, contrasting colours. I don't know a huge amount about colour theory, but this one, although I do probably have a bit of an eye for it, I double check myself a lot on this. And it is worth reading a little bit about colour theory. So, you know, you can put these colours together, you can put these colours together, you can contrast, the arrows show you what goes. So just to finish off this bit, I was going to, I'm actually choosing papers for this cover at the moment. So this is a sort of grey-green background, it's a mint green. I haven't got anything on this colour wheel that completely matches it, but it's somewhere along here. So I could contrast this with red, violet, violet and red. There are little touches of yellow, which is the next colour along, so that's fine as well. I probably wouldn't want to put blue-green or orange with it, or even this bluey violet. The rest probably would tone in. I've chosen these pages for the centre of my signatures. I'm going a bit ahead of myself now. In a couple of days you'll see how I pick the papers for our the one I'm doing start to finish. But I just wanted to tie this in with the colour wheel theory. When I was looking for anchor papers for this one, I hadn't got any red violet, so I have picked a few toning papers, and I will choose from these which I'm going to put in for my 3 signatures. I probably won't choose that one now I look at it again, and I won't choose that one. They're too away from what I need. But this little selection tone in quite nicely, so I will pick 3 of those to go with. Probably, just looking at them now, probably those 3. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit now. I'm trying to do these without rambling. So thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye bye.